The goal of the 19th is really to change the conversation around how we talk about women and LGBTQ people in politics.
We are firm believers that all issues are women's issues. Our readers are people who want to be better informed and better able to participate in democracy.
We're aiming to change the future of American journalism by giving women and the LGBTQ community the platform and the voice that they deserve.
There's never been a better moment than right now.
The 19th is the newsroom that we've been waiting for. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Live with the 19th, where we aim to give you a front row seat to conversations at the intersection of gender, politics, and public policy. I'm Errin Haines, Editor-at-Large for the 19th, an independent nonprofit newsroom that aims to empower you with the information, resources, and community that you need to be equal participants in our democracy. Today, I'm with three of President Joe Biden's cabinet secretaries: Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo, Housing and Urban Development Secretary Marcia Fudge, and Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm, for a broad conversation on what happens when policy is focused on women, families, and the LGBTQ+ community. We are very excited to have this discussion. Please note that due to scheduling issues, my conversation with Secretary Granholm was recorded separately. As today's conversation gets going, we hope you'll share it on social media using the hashtag #the19thlive. And if you're not already, please be sure to sign up for our free newsletter at 19thnews.org/subscribe, where you can find out about upcoming 19th News events. Finally, this event is presented by our members. They make events like this possible and play a critical role in supporting our journalism. Our spring member drive is happening right now, and you can help us reach our goal of growing our community by 700 new members. So please visit 19thnews.org/membership to support the 19th today. Now, let's start with our conversation. Well, I want to begin with talking about the reality that the previous administration really made the transition kind of difficult. I want to know, what were some of the immediate challenges each of you faced once you took over your agencies?
Thanks again for having us, Errin. I think the biggest challenge we had was to get a grasp on our staffs. I mean, we inherited agencies that were woefully understaffed. Our staffs were overworked, tremendously intelligent and hardworking people, but clearly overworked, and just trying to figure out where all the pieces were, where was a good place to start, because we didn't have the transition. So we just made it a point of just saying that we know that the president's priority is COVID. And so we started there to find out what was being done there. But the biggest issue was staff and the morale. And I think that we've turned that around really very quickly.
I would agree completely with that. The other thing I would add is, at least in my department, in addition to the morale of the career staff was probably at an all-time low. But in addition to that, a lot of positions were left empty. So we have been in the process of trying to just staff up again, because for whatever reason, the prior administration chose to leave these positions empty, sometimes, very important positions. So it's really, I think that people are in general enthusiastic that, we're here, we believe in them, and we're going to staff up to get the job done.
Yeah, that does sound like quite a challenge. I mean, Secretary Raimondo, are we talking dozens, hundreds of positions that were vacant when you got there?
I don't have an exact number, closer to hundreds than dozens.
Honestly, the big one was that the department was hollowed out. So many people gone, so many of the key agencies had depleted, personnel wise. So we're scrambling to try to make sure we've got brilliant and subject matter ready people to be able to fill these important roles.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, Secretary Fudge, you mentioned, the pandemic really being the priority once the administration took office, and really it was the priority the first 100 days of governing. I would ask both of you, kind of, where would you say each of you is, with your agency at this 100-day milestone? But also, what were some of the ways that you specifically had to respond to the pandemic, positions you had to create or prioritize filling specifically to kind of deal with that issue? Secretary Raimondo, I'll come to you first on this one.
So I think first and foremost, just letting all the employees know that their safety is our top priority. We have done that over and over again, and I think that's been well received. We are still not back in person. Folks are going through the process of being vaccinated, but again, we want to make sure everybody is vaccinated and feels good before they're asked to return. And then we are now beginning the discussion around what's it going to look like post-COVID. And I think we will get to a place where we will still allow for some virtual work so people can have some flexibility. But I also think everybody's kind of excited to get back into the office and see their friends and colleagues, and we definitely want to make that a reality as soon as we're able to.
So we've supported this mission of research and of being the solutions department, but we've also really focused on deployment of technology. And so getting everybody thinking about what is our role in making sure we are deploying renewable energy technology across the state and across the country. And so here's what one of the things I'm really proud of is that we have decided that we are going to focus on reducing the costs further of solar, for example, by another 60%, which is very cool. And we want to make sure that we reduce the cost of next generation technologies, like something called green hydrogen. We want to make sure that all of these technologies are affordable, which of course helps with deployment. And we just announced this big offshore wind goal, for example, adding 30 gigawatts of offshore wind on the Atlantic coast to make sure that we continue to add renewables to the transmission grid. Lots of great stuff happening.
I think that the only difference between what the Secretary said and our agency is that we have such direct influence on people's lives because of the housing. So we were probably in a little bit of a different situation. We too made sure that we talked with all 7,500 or so employees in the first few weeks to let them know what the expectation was, what direction the agency was headed, and my directive from my boss. You know, the president basically saying to us that there were some things that we had to do and that were expected of us. And secondly, I think just to give them the confidence and the comfort to know that we were all moving in the same direction, that I had confidence and faith in them, and that we were going to do our job. The mission of HUD is very, very simple. It's to house people. And so we were going to make sure that the 500 and some odd thousand people that sleep without a roof over their head in this country were going to be addressed very, very quickly, that we were going to address the vaccinations and the testing in our communities, in the communities we represent and support. And so it was kind of a all hands on deck, but as well as to say to them that our clients need hope and our agency needs hope. So I think we moved in a very positive direction very, very swiftly.
Yeah, I do want to follow up with you, Secretary Fudge, because to your point, certainly a lot of the issues that were exposed, in this pandemic were issues that affect your agency directly and the folks who use your services. Were there roles that you had to prioritize or even create within HUD in these first 100 days to really specifically address the needs of folks in the pandemic and maybe even beyond that?
Absolutely, we did. But the good thing is that a number of people who were hired prior to my confirmation were consummate professionals. They know the industry. They know the housing market. They know the client. And so they were able to begin to do some of the work prior to my arriving. But of course, we're still hiring people. I mean, I still don't have a full administrative staff. So it is a challenge. But because there were so many really good people there, they just needed a direction and some leadership, and that was pretty easy for me to do at that point because we were in a position where we had to find ways to try to reduce the numbers of people who were contracting COVID in our facilities. So everybody was on the same page. Yeah, it was hard to do, but it wasn't anything that we were not up to doing.
you are among 5 women cabinet secretaries in a pretty diverse administration. And I want to talk a little bit about that dynamic. Like, I mean, is there like a group chat or something? I mean, seriously, like, did you know each other before this very well? Are you seeking each other out? And are you looking for kind of opportunities to collaborate among, like, you know, your shared concerns, interests, challenges?
Well, we definitely are collaborating already on substantive areas. For example, we have a jobs cabinet, and Marcia, Fudge, and Gina Raimondo and I are part of the 5 who are on the jobs cabinet. And and Janet Yellen, of course, who's the Treasury Secretary, really important for feeding information into the jobs cabinet. Catherine Tai, who is our US trade representative, she's really important for feeding into the jobs cabinet in the sense that we want to develop policies that are going to create jobs in America. So we're working with these just great women who I always find, I love working with women because there's fewer egos and you can get more stuff done. And that is definitely true with this cabinet. They are amazing.
I did not know, folks. I'm a newcomer to Washington. So, in fact, I was just saying to the secretary before we started that I resigned from being governor on a Tuesday night and then was sworn in as secretary on a Wednesday. So, you know, and the process of moving down to DC. I think that we are absolutely collaborating across the cabinet. I feel incredibly lucky to be on this team. The president has assembled not only a diverse group, but a committed group, a group that shares his values, and we have a sense of purpose. You know, we're the team that has to get it done. We have chatted about getting together, the women, maybe for drinks or dinner, and I think we will do that once COVID calms down just a bit more.
And I would say I was fortunate. I served with Deb Haaland, of course. I had some interactions with Governor, now Secretary Granholm. And so I had a little, probably more exposure. And living in Washington, which is something that they're still being challenged to do, made my transition a little bit easier. But I would just say to you this, Errin, that it has just been a real pleasure and privilege to work in an administration that understands how important diversity is, embraces it, empowers us, as well as it says that what we do as it relates to COVID or any other major issue is an all-agency effort. So we don't work in silos. We work together, no matter the agency. So I'm really, really especially pleased to have gotten to know the secretary sitting next to me over the last few months. And it has been, I think, a very, very successful first 100 days for us all.
Yeah, keep me posted on when you guys are going to get those drinks together. I want to hear more about this.
Maybe we'll invite you one time.
Exactly.
Well, listen. Consider this my RSVP. I would love to be a fly on the wall for that. I want to keep talking about how you bring your lived experience to your respective roles. I mean, certainly at the 19th, we talked so much about how, how people's lived experience can factor into governing and influence policy. And so I wonder, for you, Secretary Raimondo, how do you see commerce really playing in the lives of women in the United States? And for you, Secretary Fudge, how you see the Department of Housing and Urban Development playing out in the lives of women in the U.S. and how you think about that given your lived experience?
Well, I would say it's a big part of the reason I took the job. Prior to getting into public life, I was a business owner, and I was frequently, if not almost always, the only woman at the board table, the only woman in the room, the only woman among the investor group. And I just, and then I had a young family at the time. The time I actually started my business, I had 2 little babies. When I ran for office, I had a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. Now have 2 teenagers, taking care of my almost 90-year-old mother. And so, that's what I take to my job. An experience, that's a lived experience. And I think I'm very proud of the president for putting in his jobs package the care economy investments, and I took the job in part to fight for that. Really excited about the families plan, finally investments in childcare. So many women, they I talked to a woman the other day. She said that she maxes out her credit cards for daycare so she can go to work. We are on the team that is going to try to break down those barriers so women can go to work and stay at work, and provide them with support. So anyway, I take that certain lived experience and I'm very conscious of it, and I think it makes me work a little harder to get the jobs package and the family package passed.
It's funny when you sit back and think about your life, Errin, and all of us are the sum of our experiences, obviously. And so, as a little girl, I lived in inner city Cleveland. You can't grow up in a city like Cleveland and be a black child and not know somebody or have family that lives in public housing. Mm-hmm. So it's something that you were introduced to when you're very, very young. Mm-hmm. I was the mayor of a city that was 97% black. You cannot live in that environment and not know about public housing. But I also grew up with a grandmother and a mother who believed in service. And so my grandmother was the kind of person that led everything. She was the deaconess of the church. She was the neighborhood person that everybody went to. So you grow up understanding that you have a responsibility and an obligation. And so coming to HUD was just very natural for me, actually, because I not only know about it from being a mayor and building public housing and building senior housing, but I also know the people, and I know what the people see and think and feel. And so it was a natural connection for me to be able to say, I know what it takes to make a difference in your lives. Not only do I know it firsthand, but I still talk to people. I talk to tenants. I've talked to tenants organizations since I've been here. I was in New Jersey yesterday. I talked to tenants. It is a part of who this administration is. And so that's why I'm really so excited about the $40 billion they want to put in the jobs plan to get rid of mold and lead and radon or whatever other issues there are in our public housing units, that they want to build, that this president wants to build 200,000 new housing units. It is an exciting time from a bold, visionary president. And so I'm really just happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I'm one of the 5 cabinet agencies who are focused on the American Jobs Plan is because there's so much in there that involves clean energy. So for example, if we're going to add renewable energy to the transmission grid, if we want to get to the president's goals of having 100% clean electricity by 2035 and 0 carbon pollution emissions by 2050, that means we have to add technology and we have to add resources to the grid to make sure that we are relying less on dirty fuel and more on clean fuel. And so what does that mean for us? It means we got to beef up the transmission grid. And then what does that mean? It means we've got to make sure that it's in the American Jobs Plan so that we build out more clean energy opportunity on the grid. It also means that we want to invest in the kinds of technologies that will get us to our goal. So we don't want to leave fossil fuel communities behind. There's a lot of people who have worked in the fossil fuel industry, people who have, been part of communities that have pumped oil and gas. And so the question for them is, what about us? We've powered this country for generations, and now are you just going to turn your back on us? And the answer is no. So the president has a commitment to ensure that communities are not left behind, whether it is communities who are frontline communities, who have disproportionately people of color who have been in the, living under the smokestacks of dirty, polluting factories, or communities that have powered this country and who now see us moving in a different direction and what's happening for them. Part of the American Jobs Plan ensures that 40% of the investments in that plan go to communities that have been left behind, go to make sure that we are giving opportunity for people whose children can't breathe because they have health impacts as a result of climate pollution, making sure that we're spending money there. So that's a big piece of it. But also for the people who have been involved in fossil fuel extraction, making sure that we are attaching technology to those fuels to reduce carbon pollution so that we are actually continuing down this path of a net zero carbon pollution future. So all of that is part of what the Department of Energy is focused on, including demonstration projects of all this new technology to make sure that people are put to work in building this future. It's super exciting because there's so much in this plan that involves clean energy and therefore jobs. You know, there's all these commercials out there where the president says, when I hear climate change, I think of jobs. It is so true. There's all kinds of jobs for all kinds of people embedded in this plan all across the country. So to me, what I tell the president is keep on that jobs message. It's all about jobs. And I feel that so deeply. And I'm so excited to be part of this movement to be able to create opportunity across the country.
I want to hear about, what you have told the president that you need to help Americans and how this legislation addresses that. And if you had any input at all on either of these pieces of legislation in terms of how your agencies fit into their success.
So with respect to the Department of Energy, really exciting that we are going to invest a greater amount in weatherization and in retrofitting buildings. A lot of that flows as well in partnership with the Department of Housing and Urban Development, which is Secretary Fudge's area. But we've got the technology on our side and we help to administer the weatherization program. And the reason why I raise this is because it's communities that disproportionately have to pay for leaky homes and see they have a high energy burden is what we call it. They may pay up to 30% of their income on paying for energy because their buildings are not leak proof, right? So we want to go in and fix that and make sure that people have good buildings. We want to make sure that people in those communities also don't have lead pipes, that end up having kids drink out of lead pipes that would poison them. So we want to make sure that we create a place to live for communities that have been in an unsafe situation. So that's really an important priority. The American Families Plan, just as one example, and I say this on a personal basis, the president in the American Rescue Plan did this too. The president really is honestly and sincerely concerned about families that need to be able to pay for their childcare, for example. And so the notion that his agenda has given single moms, I mentor a single mom in Georgia, and I say this because it really resonates with me because of her experience. She's got 2 kids. She's got a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old. And she makes a minimum wage. She works full time. Somebody who works full time shouldn't be living in poverty, but she is because the minimum wage in Georgia is so dang low. But this child tax credit, which she will get starting in June every month, where she gets $300 for the young one and $250 for the 7-year-old. That $550 for her is everything from a cash flow point of view, from being able to live and pay her rent. So I'm just saying that everything this administration is doing is really keeping in mind where people need help the most. And I love the fact that they are fearless about having government work for people. We've lived in this environment where you've got, from Ronald Reagan on, this notion that government is bad and but government is us. And this president believes that government can be a force for good for people who have been left behind. And so to me, that's one of the most glorious reasons why I'm thrilled to be able to work for this administration, because he sees the importance of efficient government, but a government that is directing resources where the need is the greatest.
Well, of course, our staffs have been talking very regularly with the president about the bill, as well as the rescue plan. I mean, we have been involved with this every step of the way. The housing pieces are pieces, most of which came out of HUD. And so we know very well what they are. We are very supportive of what they are. And we are prepared to march forward to make sure that they become a part of a bill that is passed by the House and the Senate.
You could tell, the House and the Senate. I like that. No, I agree. I absolutely agree. I think a lot of what's in the package is long overdue. And as I've been out talking to businesses, small businesses, entrepreneurs, members of Congress, governors, there's a lot of people, and this is how I feel, who are like, finally, we have a president who recognizes childcare is an economic issue, not just a human issue. Finally, we have a president who realizes we have fallen behind in infrastructure and we have to make big investments. Finally, we have a president who says everybody deserves access to affordable high-speed broadband, not just everybody who's, rich enough to afford it or everybody who lives in a community that has it. So, I agree with everything Marcia says. It's exciting, it's a moment. But I feel as I've gone around to talk to people, there's definitely a view that people are being listened to and that there's a team in the White House and in the administration that is really trying to break down some of these barriers that have stood in between them and living a decent life for a long time.
I also want to ask about Vice President Harris, because I know that she has also been very involved in both of these plans, as well as the pandemic rescue package. I wonder if either of you have had a chance to meet with her since you're swearing in, and what you can say about her leadership so far, and whether and how she's been helpful to you since taking office. Secretary Fudge?
Well, we've not met, but we've talked. And I've been on calls with her, and she is just as committed as the president is. She also understands, having grown up in her environment, why it is important to do the things we're doing. And I will say this to anybody, that if this pandemic does not show people how important housing is or broadband is, I don't know that they will ever get it. 14 months or so ago, they said, everybody go home and stay home and let's ride this out. What happened if you didn't have a home, Errin? What happens if your children were in environments, whether they be urban or rural, where they did not have high-speed internet or broadband, and they were asked to go to school virtually? It is a foundation upon which people live their lives. And so I just cannot even understand why people would question what the president is doing with this jobs package.
Yeah, I could not agree more, by the way. It's so well said. I was actually with the vice president 2 days ago in Rhode Island. We were traveling there together to talk to small businesses and women-owned small businesses, to hear from them how, what's going on, how can we help, what do they think of the jobs package. And, I agree with what the secretary said. She's as committed as ever and as committed as the president. She takes her own lived experience to this, which is a great thing. She's very focused on the care economy, among other things, and making sure that the people who take care of our loved ones, and they're almost all women, and they're almost all women of color, the CNAs who take care of my mom, in her home, or child care workers, it's important that they can make a decent wage. They can make a livable wage while they're doing the important work of taking care of our children or disabled or elderly loved ones. And I know that that's a priority of the vice president. And I just think it's pretty amazing that we have a president and vice president who get that, and who are committed to making it a reality.
And this is the other thing, Errin, if I may. When you look at public housing, the vast majority of people who live in public housing are women. Mm-hmm. They are women with children. They are senior citizens. And so we have to take a look at the people we serve and represent. And that clearly for public housing is a majority of women, as well as what the secretary was just saying about the care economy. Most of the people in this country that care for other people are women. And most of them are women of color. Mm-hmm. So I think that the vice president and president recognized that very, very early, and made sure that it was a part of our plan.
Well, another constituency I want to ask you about that we are very focused on and concerned about at the 19th is what happens to LGBTQ folks in this administration and coming out of this pandemic, because we know that many LGBTQ Americans felt less safe in the past administration due to policies that had a harmful impact on their lives. And many states are now passing or considering anti-trans legislation. I'm wondering, Secretary Fudge, what your agency is doing to create more inclusive policy that really addresses some of those disparities and inequities in access, in terms of access for the most vulnerable. Certainly, many of them had housing challenges even before the pandemic.
We've done a couple of major things, Errin. First, we have said to every person who works in our agency that the Fair Housing Act includes all people, including LGBTQ plus communities. We have actually reversed the shelter rule, which prohibited, prior to our coming, for persons, transgender persons to live in shelters and public housing. Rule has been reversed. So we've done our part to make sure that people understand. We have contacted all of our stakeholders in those particular areas. We have made clear to them that we are their partner and that we are going to enforce the rule and enforce the law. So I think that we have really probably been the first agency to be as aggressive as we are. But I'm really, really happy to say that we've done our part so far.
One of the most important things to do, Errin, in all of these agencies is to ensure that we are hiring people who are from, communities that have been in peril. And so, just as a quick example, Department of Energy historically has been a pretty white and a pretty male-dominated place because they do science, technology, engineering, and math. And a lot of those science kinds of jobs, et cetera, have gone to, the majority male population. We have made a concerted effort to try to add, given that we have a lot of vacancies, right, to add and make sure the right voices are at the tables, because you are a smarter department if you have populations, especially who have been affected by discrimination, at the table helping to design those solutions. So I'm really proud that, for example, of the people that we have brought on so far, 56% have been Black, Indigenous, or people of color inside of our department, 56%. 60% have been women, 21% have been LGBTQ plus. So we are really making a concerted effort because there's a lot of talent out there. And the question is, how do you go? Where are the pockets you go to make sure that you are bringing in the best and the brightest? And that happened to also be an area that you need, which is to make a diverse workforce so that you can design solutions that meet people where they are at, given this country's, diverse populations. And let me just say one other thing about that. It's, representation is important, because if you don't have that representation, I know you know this, but, in the science area, for example, in artificial intelligence, we know that Black men, for example, are way disproportionately misidentified in criminal justice using those facial recognition software packages, because, there's probably not as many people who are people of color who are thinking about designing and engineering them. So we want to insert intentionally people who are making these decisions and designing these solutions who look like all of America. And I think that's a really important first step to making sure the policy is right.
I want to ask what your top priorities are for May, for this month. What is it that both of you are focused on in terms of the work that your agency is doing right now? Priorities for May, Secretary Raimondo.
To get the CHIPS Act funded. So the part of the President's jobs proposal is a $50 billion investment in semiconductors, which if we're able to do it, which I think we'll be able to get it through Congress, it'll create over time millions of good paying jobs for Americans in manufacturing. I've got a passion, I share the President's passion for manufacturing jobs, and we've lost way too many manufacturing jobs in this country in the past 20, 30 years. And those are good jobs. By the way, good jobs that you don't need a college degree to get. So if we can have this money invested in building more manufacturing operations in America, investing in more research and development, training people to get jobs in these advanced manufacturing operations, that would just be incredible.
And for me, in about 2 weeks, we're going to start budget hearings. You know, the president, we're waiting for the president to deliver his budget. We will be defending that budget in hearings. And so I'll be doing a lot of preparation for that. But in the meantime, I will be talking to many of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to talk about how we can come together in some bipartisan way to get this jobs bill through. And then thirdly, what we've been doing, you know, I'm doing calls with mayors and governors and people and stakeholders, builders, and et cetera, to make sure everyone is clear on what the president's plan is. And then lastly, I think, and most importantly probably, Errin, is to let people know that this is a new administration that is going to be held accountable. We want to be held accountable. And we want to change the things that need to be changed. And so I just want to give people hope and excitement and make them feel that they elected the right people, put the right people in place to make a difference in their lives. And I think it's important to show that every single day.
Thank you, Secretaries, for those great conversations, and to all of you for tuning in. We hope you'll join us for our next 19th live conversation on May 26th, when we'll be exploring the history behind and solutions to ending anti-AAPI violence. To get those event details, sign up for our free events newsletter at 19thnews.org/subscribe. And a final thanks to the nearly 10,000 members supporting our nonprofit newsroom. It's your contributions that make conversations like today's possible. So if you're not a member yet, you can show your support today by donating at 19thnews.org/membership. We look forward to welcoming you to the 19th family, and we'll see you at our next event.